Listen, welcome everybody. Thanks for telling us where you're calling in from. It's this feels like a global event, so that's really tremendous. And just to reassure you, the final communication from COP28 is not expected now. It's probably not going to be expected until midnight. So you're not missing anything apart from kind of furious behind the scenes negotiations, and I imagine they're pretty pretty hard negotiations at this stage. So thank you for making time available. I'm joined by Julia, who's the managing director of the Jim Foundation. I'm Alex McGilvray. I'm the executive director, and we've got a team at back office also with us here now. And we're delighted to be unveiling Jim 3.1 to you today. And many of you will have already had a look at Jim 3.0. So we're going to cover a little bit of Jim 3.0, but also talk about the enhancements that we've added in fact, just in the last month for Jim 3.1. But just briefly, a word about the Jim mentality and mission. Julia, if you could go on to the next slide. So in the small text there, and I don't need to tell most of you because I think most of you are from the world of investments. So I think you'll already know that there's more and more requests from all types of stakeholders for impact information, whether it's on carbon emissions, other GHG emissions, or whether it's on positive impacts, socioeconomic impacts from your financial institution. That might be from your investors. That might be a development finance institution or a multilateral development bank. It might be from government agencies and regulators. It could be from the Bankers Association. There's more and more information being requested at the moment. And I know, because we've engaged with a lot of you, that it's currently quite difficult to know how to report, what standards to use, what advisors to use. And so what we've heard is that measurement and reporting is time consuming, confusing, and sometimes doesn't lead to the next steps on the journey towards a just transition. So our mission at the Jim Foundation is to build high quality, low cost tools aligned with the industry standards as they emerge, to empower you, the financial institutions, to disclose your full emissions, that's scopes 1, 2, and 3, to manage your risks, to set targets, and to transition to a jobs-rich, low-carbon portfolio, and while making money, profits, and having positive impacts. So that's our mission. And we've done that in the first instance by producing a tool based on input-output modeling to help you with the first part of that, which is to disclose your full emissions. So Julia, can we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So how does Jim 3.1 actually help you? We see 4 main ways that this empowers you as a financial institution. First of all, it allows you to disclose your principal impacts. Now, principal impacts sounds a bit like European Union jargon, but it's the big impacts that make a material difference to you and your stakeholders. And that includes the contribution to jobs that you make, the contribution to the local economy. For those of you who are into this is SDG 8. And also, very importantly, your greenhouse gas emissions, not just scopes 1 and 2 for you, not just scopes 1 and 2 for your clients, but scopes 1, 2, and 3 for your clients, i.e. your full investment portfolio. And we do that based on best-in-class research and development, and we've been at this for a number of years now. So that's the principal benefit, I would say. Secondly, we're offering a harmonized approach to all financial institutions. Why is that important? That's important for 2 reasons. One, you know that you're not going it alone with a model that may not be reliable, may not be available next year, and most important of all, is not comparable with your peers, your competitors, and with your investors and stakeholders. So harmonization is really important, and we see a lot of fragmentation in the market at the moment. So we're not in favor of fragmentation. Number 3, this eliminates the need for you to build your own in-house systems. We know that's difficult and expensive and time-consuming. We also know that it means dedicating staff time to building systems rather than analysing results and planning actions. And that is a major obstacle at the moment. Too many banks, too many financial institutions are stuck trying to perfect their measurement, and they're not getting onto the action bit. And obviously, action is the point of all of this. So then number 4, reducing the data collection burden. And we know that many of you on the banking side, but also in the development finance side, spend probably too much time sending Excel sheets to your investors, clients, owners, stakeholders. So we want to streamline that process again so that you can get on with the business of transitioning to a low carbon economy. So those are the 4 main benefits that we see of participating in an exercise like the Joint Impact Model 3.1. Thanks, Julia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex.
So I'm going to hand over to Julia now. Okay. I'm going to stay in the background, and then I'll be around for the Q&A afterwards as well. So Julia, over to you.
Great. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me, Alex?
We do hear you.
You do hear me? Okay, great.
We do. Sorry.
Yes. I'm just now seeing you. Thank you. All righty. So thank you, Alex, for that overview. I'll be walking you through the new key features of GIM 3.1. So one of them being we've updated the macroeconomic data. We've updated the power sector, and I'll go into that a little bit deeper in a bit. We have included the SFDR module, so that is PIEs 1 through 6, and I'll be showing you a little bit of that as well as IFRS S2 reporting capabilities. And we have greatly improved the user friendliness of the model. So first of all, you can see here, these are all of the, you see here are the logos for all of the databases that we source from. So this has now been updated fully. All of these databases now are fully updated in the GIM. And for GTAP, we have extended our reference years. We've added 20 new countries, most of them in Africa, which is really great because it fills a lot of data gaps that we used to have. And also we've included GTAP Power, which is a new database that includes, breaks down the electricity sector. So for those of you who haven't used the GIM before, previously, electricity was just one sector. And then we did some assumptions for, what happens if you invest in renewable energy. Well, those assumptions are now gone, and we can actually use data directly from GTAP, which is a big improvement. So a little bit more about the power module. You can see here that where it used to just be one sector, we've now been able to include all of these other sectors. So you can see here, transmission distribution, nuclear energy, coal, gas, wind, hydro, oil, and solar. And we also have the distribution, the separation between base load and peak load. So as far as the SFDR modules, so and other reporting capabilities, so we continue to be aligned with PCAF, and actually we've increased our alignment by including the PCAF quality score. We're able to report on PIEs 1 through 6, which I'm really excited to show you. And also we have the industry classification according to IFRS S2 available in the GIM as well. During the demo, you will be seeing the new dashboard, which we've already received compliments on compared to the previous dashboard, which some of you might not be familiar with, but we are very proud of this improvement. Also, we have added a practical user guide that allows you to know how to fill in data points depending on the type of user. The type of institution or client that you're running through the GIM. Okay, so it's time for the demo. Let me just share with you the latest input sheet. So I'm going to zoom out here so that you guys can see, but also I don't want to zoom out too much. So we have added an introduction tab the introduction tab will link over to resources that you can look at, and it also gives a bit of an explanation of everything that you're seeing. And what we've done here is we have added an example sheet that you can reference to learn, okay, this is how you're supposed to enter certain information into the GIM. We've also added some new inputs, and I'm going to scroll over to them right now. The most important ones are the introduction of information from your client, if available, on total consumption of energy, consumption of purchased electricity from renewable sources, and total consumption of purchased electricity. Now, these are in kilowatt hours, and these are optional inputs that you can enter if you want to further refine your PI results, and I'll go into that a little bit further. Another thing that we've added is the ability to enter here the PCAF quality score if you have direct data from your clients, but this is also optional. The model will calculate the quality score on its own if you don't enter anything in here either. I want to briefly walk you through the lists. The lists are also different from what they used to be. You might have noticed that we've now included a code as well as the name. So we've heard some feedback from some institutions that they would prefer to use the code instead of the name, and so we've made that, we've given that ability. So this is all included now. We've also included ISIC all the way to level 4, where it used to be only level 1. So this was also some feedback that we received from you. And here are the GIGS sectors. And for GTAP, I'd like to show you this part here. We've included the new electricity sectors. So because GIGS and ISIC doesn't have the separation of renewable energy yet, this is something that you have to do separately. So if you know what type of electricity it is, we ask you to please enter it via the GTAP sectors, via the numbers. Otherwise, the model will not pick it up. And so if we look at the sector exposure here, if we look at the attribution, then you can see that it's pretty much the same as it used to be. But yeah, so nothing has changed here because we're still aligned with the PCAF methodology. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run this sheet in the, in the GIM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on new file. Let me zoom out of here a little bit. I'm going to choose file. So this is the file that I had open. And it's loading a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and upload. So
this is where the subtitles should say suspenseful music.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the part that makes Alex the most nervous, but we've already tested it several times before this meeting, and it should be working just fine. So if we give it a few moments, you will see that the results are generated quite quickly. So this is the new interface. We are super happy with it. You can enter here some filters depending on the year that you've entered, and then depending on the type of attribution, you can see here that the numbers have changed. So this is without attribution, and this is with the PCAF attribution. You can see here all of the clients that we entered, so it's all already automatically categorized for you with the different the different classifications that we've heard would be of most interest to you. And you can also toggle between economic activity, country, and clients. And what is new with 3.1 is that you can drill further into the GHG emissions. So you can look deeper into the CO2 or non-CO2 emissions, and you can look deeper and get your results for Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. And that's the same for jobs. Here we just have 0 because we didn't run anything in sector exposure. But you can see here that it's separated by direct, supply chain induced, power enabling, and finance enabling. And for value added, you can also get your results split by wages, savings, and taxes. So that's the interface. But if I want to look at the results themselves, I'll go ahead and open the regular output, and then I'll show you the Pi output, which I think some of you might be interested in seeing today. So we have an introduction sheet again, which we didn't have before, which basically gives a bit of an explanation of what it is that you're looking at. And we have a table. So this table here is quite handy because it allows you to look already per client. It's already separated in these classifications. So there's no need to do an additional pivot table. You can really just look at this table and get your results at once without having to look through the numbers, the raw numbers either. So we have here the regular results. And we have here, we have here the regular results, and that also hasn't changed much. One of the features that we do have is the attributed outstanding amount, which is already automatically calculated for you, so you don't have to do an additional calculation. So now I would like to show you the other output sheet. So downloads, Pi results. So this is a new output sheet that you automatically get. If you are not using SFDR in the Pis, you can just ignore the sheet, but I do think that it has some interesting information in it. So you can see here, these are the Pis that we cover, Pis 1 through 6. These are the Pis that we'd like to cover in the future, and these are the ones that we probably will not be able to cover because it requires direct information. And you get a Pi summary. So this is a summary sheet, which in the idea is that you can just copy paste this in your SFDR reporting. So you can see here that it gives you all the results that you need. Oh, we don't have 7 yet, but up to 6, it gives you all the results. And the idea is that you can just copy paste this and put it in your report. So we find this quite handy for a lot of you that are currently working with the SFDR regulation. And here you can see the actual results themselves as well, split by client, which we also have heard that it's something that is very handy for those that are working with this. And you can see the Pi data itself. So here's where you actually get all of your results. So what's interesting about the new results is that you actually get these different outputs. You get consumption of energy, and then you get consumption of energy from non-renewable sources. You also get the share of non-renewable energy consumed. You also get the total consumption of electricity. And you get the consumption of purchased electricity from non-renewable energy sources. And you also get your Pi 6 value, which is dependent on whether something is in a high climate impact sector or not. And then just rushing back to the Pi 4 value, this is if you are connected to a fossil fuel sector, it will then show you the percentage of your portfolio that is connected to fossil fuel. So in this case, we only have 2 instances where that is true, and then it gives you the percentage of your portfolio. And then you can see here on Pi 4 that you get your percentage, and here you get your percentage as well. So that is the demo. I just went through it very quickly. I'm not sure if there have been any questions so far, but maybe we'll do the questions in the Q&A section, which is more near the end. And I'm just thinking if I have forgotten anything. Actually, we do have a question. I'm just curious to take a question since I just went through the demo. And yeah, Eric, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot, Julia. Looks great. And I just have a question on this first dashboard sheet. Is there a possibility to download this as well, or
which dashboard are we?
The one that you showed, the colorful
the online
summary.
one.
Yeah, the summary one. Yeah.
Yes, so this is a feature that we will be adding soon. We don't have the feature yet, but we do want to be able to add it because it's been requested a few times. We just didn't make it on time for this release, but subsequent releases should have it.
Okay, thanks. And another question, which we wanted to clarify: if we combine, say, real data input with GHG data with the, say, revenue data in one fund calculation, can this be, because then previously we had like an error message or kind of negative results. Has this been rectified, or?
Yes, actually, this has been resolved as well, and we'll send you a message about that. But indeed, if you enter both revenues and Scope 2 emissions, it will now run correctly. You will not have negative values anymore in this release.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
So Julie, we also have a good question from Christina about historical data. So she's asking, Christina, do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, thanks. So my question is, if let's say we are starting using your software or this framework, and we are using it for 3 years, did you think about historical data? Is it saved in there, or it's still saved in our Excels, which we download, and then we manually compile like 2023, 24, and 25 to compare the figures? Because, figure, as we see right now on the screen, it's not so valuable for us, meaning that when we compare if emissions have grown or were reduced, it's more informative.
Very good question. Very good question. We don't yet have a built-in a view of how your emissions have changed if you enter your historical data. So the data, this is a very important point, which thank you for raising it because it's very relevant. None of the data saved. So we never save any of your data. It's just a calculator where you upload the input sheet, and then you download your results. And we never see your data. Nobody ever sees your data because it's calculated in the moment, and then you just get the downloads directly saved on your downloads folder. So as far as running year to year and then comparing historical data, that's something that your team would have to assemble yourselves.
Okay.
But we think that in the future, we could add such a module where if you enter data from 2021, 2022, and then 2023, it would show you how your portfolio is developing over time. Because that's very, very useful and a very good point. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, great. And since I'm already on mute, well, I see questions coming, but I wanted to ask another question to Alex. It's about data collection. That's indeed our big pain with data collection. We have a portfolio of 180 entities. But to be honest, I don't know how this simplifies it, because it's another Excel. So I do send like Excel table to collect the data, and it's still like I don't see how my workload is reduced, because in this case I would need then to input data myself and not like my portfolio. So Alex, if you could, maybe I missed something important in this step, and I feel maybe I missed. If you could tell a bit more details how then data collection is, this workload is reduced? Thanks.
Yeah. So Christina, great question. I mean, very briefly, you can enter the client data at any level of aggregation. So you could enter all 180 of your clients as a single loan to a client if they're all in one country as a miscellaneous sector and get a rough approximation of the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions based on the mix. If you have multiple countries, you would need to you could run it as well. But I think the journey that we see the members of JIM going on is that they start at a fairly high level of aggregation and then they try and step down. So some banks have already run this, running multiple thousands of lines through it. Some other users are running 20 lines through it. I think in your case, I think you could run, if you have country, sector and amount outstanding, 3 data points, which I sincerely hope you do have available for your clients. You can run the model at that level. That gets you PCAF quality level 5, which is perfectly satisfactory to get started. Then you look at your clients, you go, this one's interesting. I wonder a bit about this. I wonder if we can get the revenue data for that client, and then we can run at the next level. So then you get more data. So that's how we envisage it going. And I know there are people on the call who've been stepping through that journey, going more granular. Does that clarify things?
Yeah, and what exactly is outstanding amount? Because we used revenues before.
It's the amount of money that you have loaned or invested in the client.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. So again, Christina, great question. So we were just showing you the results if you run revenue figures, but indeed there is also the option if you don't have revenue data, just as Alex said, if you have country and you have economic activity, then you just need to have what is the outstanding amount that you have lent to that particular client or that particular sector, I should say, because then you can aggregate everything, and then it's a lower quality score, but it's still, as Alex said, good enough to report on it according to PCAF standard.
And what does it mean, loan? Sorry, we do private equity, so we invest and we own the part, but our equity is low. For example, then it would be like 2% of the company that we own. And to be honest, it could be a big bank that we invested in, but we own only 2% and we would insert that amount. I don't know, let's say like 2 million, whatever, and then it will calculate emissions. But how do I conclusion
That's a good question, Christina. Why don't we schedule a separate call so we can go into the details on how PCAF has specific instructions on how to deal with that, and the model is aligned with those instructions. So we can go over it in detail, but equity should not be an issue. Let's schedule a separate call.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So we've got a complicated situation. We've got questions in the chat and in the Q&A. So I'm just going to go on the chat first of all. So we've got Rishika from Vivriti Capital. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Vivriti Capital. We are an NBFC here in India, and we mostly look at the SME sectors here. So we are venturing into measuring our Scope 3 financed emissions for these companies. So just in case when there are data challenges, will the PCAF methodology be applied automatically if we get the JIM model running?
Yes, the PCAF methodology gets applied automatically. Now, when you're talking about Scope 3, there is still discussions going on at PCAF as to what you should report on. We go beyond what PCAF says should be reported on at the moment. And
well,
so
only for another 2 weeks, right?
only for another 2 weeks until PCAF also includes Scope 3. So we already have all of at least upstream emissions Scope 3. We don't have downstream emissions at the moment, but it is something we're looking into adding. So yeah, it does get applied automatically as long as you follow some instructions in the attribution tab or in the sector exposure tab. Because yeah, it depends on what you enter, of course. But for GYM members, you automatically get Q&A and calls with us so that we can ensure that you're entering your data aligned with the standard that you're following. So yeah, we can always do a call as well to make sure that you're applying it as you want to.
So that means you do not apply it for category 15, investments, financed emissions?
We do apply it. So when I say that is the only downstream category that we do apply. Mm-hmm. So investments is definitely included. Actually, it is everything that we do. But when you're looking at the rest of the categories of downstream and upstream, we're looking at the upstream. Mostly, except for category 15 downstream. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've got a quick one from Carolyn about can we get euro intensities as well as US dollar intensities on the dashboard?
Yeah, so good question. So GTAP is in USD, US dollars. So the intensities that it's going to return are in US dollars. So that is something that we'll have to look into to see how we can include euro intensities. But when you're entering the revenues, I'll have to ask my specialist, Thomas. He's listening in. I'll ask him to write a reply on the message, because I think that if you enter euros, you should get euro intensity out as well. But I need to double check. So Thomas, if you're listening, please write it in the chat and let us know.
Great, thank you.
And then from Hemen asking about whether there's functionality to measure, well, this is our favorite topic, Julia, emissions avoided against a chosen baseline. And even more so, how do you work on alignment to targets? So do you want to take the emissions avoided? I'll have a go at the targets. Two good questions, Hemen. Thank you.
Yes, very good questions. We often get the question about emissions avoided, and since there isn't, let's say, there isn't a standard out there that has agreed on how to measure emissions avoided, we haven't included it yet. We do know that there is an IFI harmonized emission factors for emissions avoided. So that is what we know as GYM Foundation, what should be applied. There is an easy way to apply those IFI harmonized emission factors. So we can provide guidance on that, but we just don't have it in our tooling, because we only ever include things that are agreed upon by our members. And at the moment, there isn't like an explicit agreement on that, and that's why we haven't included it yet. We do have a section. I mean, this is different from emissions avoided, but we do have a section where you can enter emissions removals. But again, we don't have a methodology for that at the moment. It is something that we would like to do in the future. But at least if you do have a methodology that you apply at your institution, you can enter that here. But that's separate from emissions avoided. Emissions avoided is something that should be reported separately, and that's the type of guidance that we would give. But yeah, that's what I can say about that topic.
Okay, now I'm trying to do some mental maths, looking at the number of questions we have and the time we have remaining.
Yeah, so we have some slides left as well.
And we have a few slides left, so we need 5 minutes at the end to wrap up. So we have about 15 minutes to kind of carry on answering questions. It's great we've got so many questions. If we don't get to your question, we will reply offline and make it available to all participants who registered for this. So we'll try and go through them as fast as we can. So I won't ask you to come online and ask your question. I'll work through the list so we can kind of speed things up a bit. If we don't get to you, many apologies. We'll answer offline ASAP. So, Hemen, your second question, targets. So we don't have a function in this dashboard at the moment for target setting, but what we do encourage you to do is run scenarios through the ex ante functionality on the model. And the scenarios that we believe you should be exploring are scenarios aligned to Science Based Targets Initiative or the Net Zero Banking Alliance, or in your local context, if your regulator has set, for example, intensity targets for different sectors, you may also want to explore those. And what we would suggest then is that you play around with sectoral mixes for your portfolio to see what sorts of exposure would reduce your intensity from the highest emitting sectors through to the lowest. So that's where we've got to at the moment. We'll be working more on target setting in the next release of the GIM in 1 year's time. But for the moment, we say have a play with the, it's very easy to upload new scenarios and get the results 15 seconds later, as Julia showed you. So we just suggest running a bunch of scenarios, or you can run a bunch of scenarios on the same input sheet, just label them clearly so you know what you're comparing, and then compare the results. So that's a brief one. We can talk more offline about some other ways that you can go about this. I'm going to move on to Arlin Jani. So talking about partially listed companies, and quite a technical question here about whether to use total balance sheet or enterprise value. And Julia, I think we would recommend enterprise value. I
can answer enterprise value question.
Yeah. Okay. Go for that one.
Should I go for that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So according to the PCAF standard, enterprise value is what needs to be is the preferred value that you would use if the company is listed. So you can see here there's a guidance that we have at the top. And so if your company is listed, then enterprise value would be preferred. If it's unlisted, you have the option of entering total equity or total debt as your, equivalent of enterprise value. And if you don't have that, the alternative is also total balance sheet. So that is for unlisted. But if it's listed, then we recommend enterprise value. So does that answer the question?
No, thank you for answering. But what I was asking is that our clients are partially listed, like 18% in some cases.
Oh.
So, yeah, in this aspect, is EV still preferred, or should we go with a total balance sheet?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I'll have to get back to you on what is recommended if they're partially listed and unlisted. I think that the important thing is to really get a good sense of what your share of financing should be. So if it's partially listed, you can enter in there your enterprise value, and then you can enter how much you have outstanding. And then you would still get the percentage, but it might be that you might have to split it between the two. But I'll need to get back to you on that, because it is a question that I think was raised earlier, and I'm still waiting to hear back. I think, Arlin, you did ask it earlier. I'm still waiting to hear back.
Yeah, it was Luz, but we are in the same team. Yeah.
I was Luz who asked it.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is still, I still have that one pending. I'm waiting to hear back from our PCAF specialist.
The stock answer would be, if it's possible, to try both and have a look and see what the differences are. And we could certainly help you interpret that if you've got the bandwidth to try using both approaches on maybe one or two clients, just to get a sense of how they work. I'm just going to move on because Julie's got a raft of questions here, good ones as well. So first of all, has there been any change compared to GIM 2.0 in terms of MSMEs to account for potentially smaller levels of GHG emissions? But Julia, I'd say also potentially higher levels. So Julia, if you take that, then I'll tackle the one about outliers and comparability.
I'll answer that question. We did not update the firm size adjustment ratio that we used in the GIM from previous versions. So we did not, we didn't have it in our budget this year to be able to include that. We know that that's something that's outstanding and something that we'll be looking at in the future. Now that we are able to collect user fees, we have the ability to choose as well which developments do we need to do, whereas previously they're earmarked by specific people who are bringing forward, these recommendations for changes that they wanted to do in these improvements. But that is still an outstanding point that we have. Yeah, very good question.
And then questions 2 and I'd say 3 on comparability with GIM 2.0. So we would say not really comparable. And the reasons are, I think, 3 reasons. One is because the emission factors have all changed since GIM 2.0. So most countries in the world, or at least most developing countries certainly, have lower emissions intensity per unit of economic activity as a result of deployment of renewable energy. So the emissions factors have changed. The second one is that the asset to turnover ratios have changed. So if you're running amounts outstanding, the ratio that converts that into estimated sales revenue have changed, and that's as a result of significantly increased bank credit to the private sector in many countries, not every country, but many countries over the last 4 years. And so and then the third reason is that we have indeed applied some outlier management to GIM 3.0 that wasn't present in 2.0. And that's explained in our methodology, but we've approached roughly 10% of the outliers results and applied a regional average to outliers rather than taking a country average. And we've seen that a lot of those results are in smaller economic sectors and smaller economies that tends to kind of create more noise in the results. So for those 3 reasons, I would say, by all means, compare the results, but don't do kind of trend analysis, because I don't think it'll be meaningful. It would be preferable to rerun your previous results on GIM 3.1 if you want to do trend analysis. So that would be the answer to that. Now I see Leia has been answering some questions, so I hope, David, that she has answered your questions. And Hemen, yes, we'll reschedule a call. Thomas has had a go at answering Caroline, so I hope that satisfies. Eric is coming in with some superior CFA knowledge about company structures. Sharad, would you like to answer your question? Because I think this is a very interesting one. I know you're online from Kathmandu there.
Sorry, Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
I put my question over there, so probably I'm just wondering, we've been working on PCAF, and this year we did the emission calculation based on the XGEObase data they had. So how would GIM interface with PCAF, and how would the emission factor be calculated? Because in 2023, now we are referring to emerging economies for emission factors. So what would GIM consider for Nepal?
Yeah. So I think the good news is that both PCAF database and GIM uses the EDGAR emissions inventory run by the European Union Joint Research Centre. So there should be no difference in the baseline emissions for Nepal in the models. The major difference will be that XGEObase is using a rest of Asia kind of artificial set of input outputs by sector for Nepal, but it would be the same as for Bhutan and for Bangladesh and for all other countries in rest of Asia if you're not in China or India. Whereas GIM will use a Nepal-specific input-output table. And so you will expect to see some quite significant differences there, I think, in terms of the assumptions about how the different sectors of the economy interrelate with each other, the degree of imports and exports from the economy. So while you sort of get some sort of sense, I think, of your emissions from XIO-base, the PCAF guidance, I think, is for the new database is sort of it sort of says please use it, but please don't use it, kind of, is sort of their guidance. Whereas we think that with GIM you get Nepal specific input-output tables, and therefore you get a good approximation of the way the Nepalese economy works. And therefore, I would say, particularly for Scope 3 upstream, you get a more accurate view about your client's supply chain. So I think that's the key difference. Julia, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think agreed. We're in discussions with PCAF to see how we can build a bridge better between their database and ours. But that's still a work in progress. And yeah, I mean, it's as Alex said, we just have more specific information for countries that are outside of the major economies, and that's why we continue to use the GTAP database instead of the XIO-base database, indeed. And just a quick note that we will be having another webinar for the members that goes deeper into the differences between 2.0 and 3.0. So yeah, we'll be addressing those questions. If you've already signed up to be a member, you'll be able to get access to all of that in the upcoming webinar next week.
Great. So I'm switching over to the Q&A area now, and we've got, I think, 5, 6, 7 more questions here. So I'm just going to go through those. So there's quite a technical question from Samia about some grid emissions factors. I think we should probably answer that offline because I don't know the answer, unless, Julia, you know the answer off the top of your head on that one.
I'll stop sharing and I'll try to look at the.
While you look at that,
question.
I'm going on to Alina's question. So for a fund of funds, would you recommend to input SME level data or data at the level of financial intermediaries? The latter option would, of course, reduce the granularity. I think, Alina, you should be pragmatic. We always say the more granular the better. But if if you sort of suddenly get into kind of hundreds or even thousands of SMEs, then you have a different problem, which is how reliable are the individual data points that you have for those SMEs. So I think you could maybe experiment as a fund of funds by running first at a high level, and then maybe take one segment and dive deeper and see whether you get a richer picture. I think you will get a richer picture if you go more granular, but it may be best to step down into it. Julia, while you're looking at that grid one, I'm going to go on to Lena's question. In which sense are we partnering, working with Climate Trace? Very good question. So Climate Trace obviously has asset level emissions, and often those are from satellite observation matched up to international databases, and whereas the GIM is sectoral but not geographically identified. So the partnership that we're working with is to see whether we can link the investor portfolio with the physical assets geolocated in countries, to make it so that you can get a sense of the financing for those physical assets. Which I think is an interesting bridge and is consistent with Climate Trace's strong push for more accountability, and our push for trying to kind of get more granular in terms of where exactly are these portfolios generating emissions, which I think is extremely useful for our next piece of work, which will be on climate risk, which we'll come to, I think, in 2 minutes. But let me just quickly try and hoover up the last questions. So Josefina, how does this work for working with financial institutions Do all pies include the portfolio effects? Yes, they do. They have to include the portfolio effects. Otherwise, they're not. You're not really getting to the impact, and that's why a lot of FIs are struggling with their pie disclosures, is because they need some sort of model to get the full effects. David Cruz, can the economic activity data be uploaded?
I think that was already answered by Laia.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay, and then so look, I think we've done it apart from that transmission one, and so long as nobody asks any more questions now, leaving us 5 minutes just to show you what's next. Julia, should we?
Yes, let me share my screen again, and we'll get back to your question
Samia, we'll get
in
back
a
to you.
moment. Samia, yeah. So great questions, everybody. Nice to hear from all of you. Okay, so let me move forward. So what's next? So we want to integrate climate risk into the GIM. So if you're looking at the input sheet, we would just be adding one more column, optional column, asking for a location, if you have actual locations, or if you have the region of where you expect the assets that you're investing into to be. And then you would be getting a, basically a scan of which assets are at risk of experiencing physical risks due to climate change. So you can imagine flooding, for example, heat stress, all of the other climate stresses, climate change stressors that are out there. And we find that this is a tool that we're aligning with the DFIs, making sure that everybody's happy with the methodology. And then we're going to be integrating it into the GIM as a separate offering. It's something that we're really excited about, and what we've been hearing from many of you that is needed. So to comply with, different TCFD, for example, but also a lot of central banks are asking that you do this type of exercise. And even if you don't have stakeholders asking for it, we think that it's really important that you implement this type of thinking in your everyday risk management of your portfolio. The other thing that we're going to be working on is a physical activity tool. So what this means is that currently we are able to cover PCAF quality score 5 and 4. But with physical activity, this means that we'll be asking questions about fuel consumption of your individual investees, or the type of other type of energy consumption, other type of sustainable practices, and then we'd be integrating that into the physical activity tool, and it would give you a result that's not based on country sector average, but on the actual activity of the client. And this is also where the collaboration with Climate Trace comes in, because this is moving us further away from, input-output modeling, which is very handy for certain types of impact reporting that has to happen. But we need to move, we need to evolve from input-output modeling, and we need to start seeing, okay, for those particular clients that we're working with, that we're trying to reduce emissions from, can we collect physical activity data from them, and then see how our interventions are actually helping them reduce emissions? And if not, is it possible that we get that information from other sources such as Climate Trace, which takes satellite data, looks up particular sectors or particular assets themselves, and gives you a really good real-time estimate of what are the emissions exactly. And so that's something that we're really looking forward to.
I'm gonna move you along, because I know we've got a couple of last slides about the membership model.
Yes,
and I do want to. So look, many of you are members of the GIM, so thank you very much for being members. Our vision was always to become a membership organization, and we now are a membership organization, and we have 30 members already signed up, and quite a number considering signing up. So that's really fantastic. What that enables us to do is plan a work program for the future, which is maintaining the model, upgrading it, and then adding new tools, exactly like Julia was just explaining. Our big desire is to grow our membership into globally into countries where banks are operating, as well as where the kind of international finance is operating. So basically, we want to grow out of Europe and North America into Latin America, Africa, and Asia, and Middle East and Central Asia. And you can already see that we're beginning to achieve that. But over the next year, we're going to be making a big push to work with banks that we're already working with in those continents to convert into a membership organization that really solves problems on the ground for financial institutions. So that's our big dream. Thank you to everyone who's already joined for making that already a reality. But we have big ambitions to grow the membership. What's the benefit to you of doing that, Julia?
The benefit is that you get full access to the GYM model. You get personalized trainings. You get to talk with a community of practitioners that are also applying exactly the same tool as you, and you get to learn from each other. I've been learning a lot just by working on this project from different financial institutions, asset managers and DFIs on how they're looking at impact and how they're applying it. So it's been really a fascinating journey. We want to set up focus groups so that for specific developments, we can talk directly with the members so that we make sure that we make improvements that are of most importance to you. And then we'll continue to provide regulatory insights as the regulatory space continues to grow and get more and more complicated. We hope to continue to simplify that for you, but also reduce everybody's risk of coming up with their own methodology if we're all following one that is agreed upon by multiple experts in each one of these DFIs, asset managers, commercial banks, et cetera, then we can be really sure that we have a robust way of working with the regulation.
And you also get to hang out internally and build your network, because you get to talk to your procurement department and your finance department and sometimes your legal department in order to raise a purchase order for the license fee for the gym. And so that's great for internal networking, and we've heard that's like a highly valued feature of moving to this model. So lots of advantages. And shall we flash the QR code for those who don't know how to get in touch with us?
Yes.
So I think it just remains for us to say thank you so much. Great questions, great attendance. It's a really busy time of year, so we really appreciate you giving us an hour. We'll make this recording available. We'll double check that we've covered off the questions, and David will get back to you on that question about contributing to the gym. Thank you for everyone from all continents, some early in the morning for some people, late in the evening for other people. I'm sure you're all anxiously waiting for a good outcome from COP28 as we are. Meanwhile, the financial sector has to keep working. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Alex.
Thank you very much.